Thank you very much, everyone. I obviously normally start speaking with a bit of an introduction, but I feel a bit embarrassed introducing myself after that. So, just very quickly, I'm Alistair Brownlee. I spent 18 years being a professional triathlete, which for those of you who don't know is swimming, cycling and running. Doing that, I very literally, and this is quite often used as a cliche, fulfilled my childhood dreams of including winning 2 Olympic gold medals, along many other things. And like everything in life, you know, it's a long journey in terms of a sporting career. And through those 18 years, there's lots of ups and downs, and you know, there's many similarities to some of the things that we've already heard about today. And many of the partners here, I know you're trying to achieve new goals. You're trying to, we just heard about hard work, dedication, belief, teamwork. They're many of the themes that I found really important in my sporting career. So that's it, that's the journey in essence. And again, another cliche, but I think it's so true in everything that's worth doing, that the journey is always much more important than the end goal. I realised that quite early in a sporting career, that I'd spent thousands of hours training hard, week in, week out, quite often 30 to 35 hours a week training, and you stand on that podium for maybe a minute at best, maybe 2 minutes, and there's no way that feeling of crossing the finish line, standing on the podium, or actually for a lot of you guys, you know, sometimes achieving those end goals makes up for the hard work, and so it has to become the process, the hard work along the way that really drives you. And the good news is, of course, that means you can enjoy every single day of what you do. So, why am I here today? It might seem a bit random that I'm here today talking to all you amazing people, and the energy in this room is incredible, by the way, so thank you for having me. And ultimately, I spent a career running around in Lycra for a living. What did I do? Running around every day, going swimming, cycling, and running, that I can take away learnings for you. Well, the truth is, I retired only 10 months ago, and so I'm actually also transitioning to a new way of life, learning in a new world of work, trying to learn new skills, trying to set new goals, trying to transition to probably a more normal form of living. And so I think probably I'm in a similar position to quite a lot of the partners here, of trying to find my new why, trying to find what drives me every day, trying to find that thing that gives me the freedom and pleasure and joy, and also the motivation to keep pushing on something new. So, when we talk about my model of what performance looks like, this is effectively it. I always have to say an apology at this point. There is no golden bullet. It all starts and ends with consistency, which is why it's at the top there. But, you know, it can be incredibly fun along the way. And that's why it's as a circle there, because ultimately everything that goes back into that cycle drives more consistency, and the aggregation of those gains over time is what's key. I think we all tend to overestimate what we can achieve in hours and days, and underestimate what we achieve in weeks, months, years, and decades. And what comes out at the bottom of that is performance, whatever that might look like for you. Again, consistency is key, but consistency is not only about doing the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out. I mean, that was my sporting career. I did 3 sessions a day pretty much, 35 plus hours of training a week, swimming, cycling and running almost every day in every weather conditions that the fantastic Yorkshire weather could throw at me. But also consistency in approach, in the psychological approach. And I learned this writing a book where I interviewed the champion jump jockey, A.P. McCoy, and his stats are incredible. Thousands, you know, I won maybe tens of races, maybe 100 if I was lucky. He won 4,500 races over a 20-year career, being absolutely the best at what he did. And I asked him, how do you have that kind of success over such a long period of time? And he said, the truth is, I never got too excited by the success, and I never got too down about the failures. I just kept going and had that level approach. And so that consistency of the way you approach challenges psychologically, I think, is so important. So how do we find consistency of approach in our lives to perform to the best of what we can do? The dangerous myth of the perfect routine. I think, especially in whether it's sport, performing, business, whatever it might be, we're surrounded by this myth that we need to do these incredibly hard things to achieve hard things. The truth, I actually think, is exactly the opposite. We need to make every single day as easy as possibly can. We need to make what we do, what we need to do to be successful, as easy as possible. And for me, that's not getting up at 5 in the morning to go training as an example. If I did that every single day all the way through the year, I probably wouldn't have lasted long trying to do three or four sessions a week. Second thing, really important, this is something I learned quite early on in my sporting career. You know, when we see headline figure athletes, or we might see the most impressive businessmen out there, or whatever walk of life that people are successful in, we only see that one-off. And remember, we don't see the tens or hundreds or even thousands of people that have done similar things to them or approached the training or problem in a similar way. And so, you know, this is called survivorship bias in science. And for me, it came up from seeing people in training environments. And you see a champion come out of whatever training environment or whatever coach was involved, and you know, there'd be 50 other athletes in that setup. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, why would I copy what that one person does when there's 49 people there who haven't had success from that approach? So, and of course, you only hear about their crazy routine, whether it's whatever, on Instagram, social media, in the news. You hear about these incredible things that one person does, and you don't hear about the fact that it's failed for the other 49 of them. So the answer here is the only thing we can do as individuals is maximize our own individual performance every day. Now you have to, the number one thing I miss when I get asked what do you miss about being a professional athlete, it's not the travel, it's not the winning, it's not anything else. It's actually, I had one single goal every day, and that was to be as good as I could be that day, to get the most better, the most performance gain I could in a single day. And if I could sit down on an evening, you know, whether because resting is part of your job as a professional athlete, thankfully, if I could sit down on that evening on the sofa and say to myself, do you know what? I did everything I could today to make myself the best possible athlete, then I knew that I'd done all I could do. It's just the most simple form of achievement. And actually that's something I really miss. But the lesson from that, I think, is it's all about doing what you can do. As long as you've done what you can do in that day, it's really irrelevant that what anyone else around you has done. So focus on yourself and maximize that day in, day out. Thirdly, this is something in a sporting context that came to me as data became much more kind of prevalent in all of our training lives and our lives, using wearables, data collection. And I realized I had this golden rule that, of course, you can go down lots of rabbit holes and start looking at various data and actually be distracted. And deep down, I am a very analytical, very objective, kind of scientific-based mind. But I could spend all my time looking at various bits of data and really, thinking that I was being really accurate with what I was doing. But actually, it didn't make my actions, my training, any more precise. Now, what do I mean by that in particular? So if you use an example, you can collect a bit of overnight wearable data, or you can collect some training data. And if ultimately I didn't use that data the day after to change what I was doing, I realized there wasn't a lot of value in that particular data or output or decision per se. Now, I've given data a little bit of a hard time there, but I think that is applicable to anything you do. So really it's about stay focused on those key goals and the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and don't get distracted by things that may sound very accurate but don't necessarily have precision. I think this is my favorite point. It's just such a, unfortunately I didn't invent it, I heard someone else saying it. But if people, probably the number one question I get asked is, as many of you can guess, is Was it you that carried your brother, or did he carry you? It's probably my favourite question to get asked, because it makes me look good. But I carried him, in case any of you were wondering. But secondly, the number 2 question I get asked is, how do you inspire yourself and keep going day in, day out? How do you keep motivated? How do you get up every morning and go training 3 times on that day for 4, 10 years, whatever it might be, to try and get to the top of an Olympic podium? And I think there's lots of ways. People can motivate themselves intrinsically for the love of it. As I said, they can motivate themselves financially or output or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. But really, to do anything consistently over a long period of time, you have to remove willpower out of the equation. And what do I mean by willpower? I think of willpower as I'm sat on a sofa, tonight at 7 p.m. and I'm trying to decide whether to go to the gym or not. By the time you're sat on the sofa deciding whether to go to the gym or not, or get up and do some work, it's too late. You've already made it too difficult for yourself. Now, of course, there's times where you're going to do that. Everything else fails. It's not part of your routine. Your computer's not working. Something's happening in your personal life. You have to pick up your children from schools or clubs, and you still have to motivate yourself to go down and get on with what you're going to do. But really reserve that jar, that bucket of willpower, only for exactly when you need it. This is backed up by loads of research and behavioural scientists, and because look at it in another way, that you get decision fatigue. Countless small decisions just wear you down. Reduce the need for willpower and reduce the need for those plenty of small decisions. How do you do that? How do you reduce the need for willpower? Habits. Habits are the strongest thing we've got for long-term sustainable performance. My model of performance, as what I said earlier, with the overarching theme of that, is that being our best is pretty simple. It's a dose-response relationship. It's about doing as much as we possibly can over a long period of time. Now, you don't do a lot of anything. You don't do a lot of work, progress in work, building relationships, building teams, training for endurance sport, climbing mountains. You can't do hours and hours of it one week and nothing the next week. The secret to being successful at anything is consistently doing almost the same day in, day out, week in, week out, so it builds up and accumulates over time. So weeks and weeks of consistent work has to come from good habits. And linking back to that previous point about willpower, habits are the best thing we've got, I think, to remove the need for willpower. So that's what my schedule looked day in, day out for the best part of those 18 years. And in the space of about an hour there, from the alarm going off to diving into the swimming pool, if I was laid in bed thinking, do I want to go swimming this morning or not, I would have never made the fact that an hour later I was racing up and down a swimming lane trying to beat my brother. I would have stayed in bed. But instead, I broke it up to small, achievable, habitual, bite-sized chunks. Get out of bed, have a cup of tea, get in the car, drive down the road. Just make it small, make it achievable. And that's also backed up with plenty of research. Some people in here might have heard about the 10,000 hours theory of expert performance. It's coined by an American scientist called Anders Ericsson, and he said that to achieve kind of expert performance in anything, it takes 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years of doing 20 hours a week or something. And of course, good habits build up over months and years are the way to get there. So many of you here today, as you're successful partners and you start to manage teams of people around you, and there's the expectation of working for such a brilliant business as UW, and standing on stage here today meeting people, there's a sense of pressure that comes from that. Firstly, I think the most important thing to say about pressure is something my long-term coach Malcolm told me. He said, look, pressure can be seen as a negative. We talk about it all the time as this thing that weighs on people's shoulders, slows them down, makes life hard for them. But look at it this way, you know, you could have no pressure. At least with pressure it means you've done something to get there and deserve it, which is much better than not having any. So embrace it as a privilege. And as it says there, probably one of the biggest cliches in sport, but a great one, is pressure really is a privilege. I really only one time in my career did I feel really acute external pressure. The internal pressure is always the most significant one for me, and I think most people who are trying to perform in their fields, because you're putting so much effort and attention into what you're doing, you feel like you owe it to yourself to achieve, which is so important. That means it means whatever that goal is, it means a lot to you, and you've worked hard towards it. And of course, that is an amazing thing. But going into the London Olympics, there was so much external pressure, which is not normal for a triathlete. Triathlon is a pretty niche sport, to be honest, and you race all around the world with crowds of maybe 10 or 20 people, maybe a few more, and all of a sudden there's kind of national interest in a race. And before the race, Johnny and me are sat on a sofa in a hotel room in London, and there's a news story on that is basically interviewing people in Hyde Park, saying, "Oh, where have you come from today to see the Brownlees win the Olympics?" And Johnny just turns to me and says, "Oh gosh, I better not F this one up, Al." And so, but within about half an hour, we're out on the course, and I'm cycling along, doing a warm-up and there's hundreds of thousands of people there, flags, banners, everything, and you know, as kind of contrived as it sounds, you know, within seconds, that feeling of pressure went from "this is overwhelming" to "this is amazing." There's all these hundreds of thousands of people here who just want to see me do well. Well, there's a few from other countries like Spain and France who didn't want me to do well, wanted the other bloke to win. But the vast majority were there to support Johnny and me, and it really turned into a positive. The whole thing flipped on its head. It was quite an amazing experience. So embrace the pressure, enjoy it. It shows that whatever the goal is means a lot to you. So, ruthlessness. This here obviously is the link to the video that I'm probably most well known for. Just to reiterate it, I am the one that carried him, not the other way around. It's very important you remember that. If you take anything away from today, no, I'm kidding. I mean, sport, business, whatever we do, I really believe there is a time to be ruthless. There is a time to make tough decisions, and they are actually few and far between. Johnny loves to say that in the Olympic Games in Rio, we were in the dream scenario. We were first and second in the race, and we go through a water station on the run, and he turns to me and says, "Slow down, you don't want to overheat." I immediately sped up, and it was the race-winning move, and he says, "Al was so ruthless." But in sport, in endurance sport, it is only you in the race, and you cross the line, you start on your own and you finish on your own, but you have an enormous team of people around you, and teamwork is so important to get you to that start line. The hours of training that go into it, the coaches, the doctors, the physios, the masseurs, the nutritionists, all those people help you get to that start line. And the point about ruthless, and of course, as I said, there's a time to do it, and if the last few kilometres of the Olympic Games isn't the time to be ruthless, I don't know when is. But only a few weeks later, there was the moment in Mexico where Johnny was stumbling, and I carried him across the finish line because he was having medical trouble, and to try and to get in there as quickly as possible. So, yeah, of course, be ruthless when you need to be, but the rest of the time, even in elite sport, there's time and latitude to show some humanity, work as a team, and be a bit bigger. And of course, it made me look like a good bloke, most importantly. Resilience. Resilience really is a buzzword at the moment, isn't it? But when I think about resilience, it's sometimes with a bit of a different angle to what other people think about. We quite often think about resilience as this
overcoming the big life challenges. And of course, we have those. We all have challenges. Everyone in this room has had to overcome big challenges, and you know, that's probably some of the motivation for a lot of people of why you're here today. But remember, daily life is full of challenges. It's less about being resilient